Clarence Saunders. Anybody ever heard the name Clarence Saunders? He worked at a little dry goods store years and years ago when dry goods stores were a big thing. And he had a boss that was a little bit of a grumpy boss. And Clarence himself was an idea guy. Anybody here idea people? Clarence was always coming up with a new idea. And you know, his job was just kind of to take care of the store and serve the customers. And it was one of those places where you come in, you say, hey, I need a cup of flour, I need some licorice, I need a bolt of cloth or whatever, and they would put it together for you. So Clarence is talking to his boss, and every day he's coming up with a new idea. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if? So he's doing this so much, in fact, that one day his boss gets really irritated with him and says, listen, I'm done. No more ideas from you. In fact, if you come up with one more idea, you're fired. Sounds like a great boss, right? So Clarence goes to lunch a few days later, and he's walking around and he sees this, line just down the block, and he can't figure out what in the world people are trying to get into this new restaurant that's just opened. So he goes to check it out and gets in line and walks in, and it turns out it's this new idea in restaurants where you go through, you get you a tray, you walk through the line, you look at the food that you're getting ready to purchase, you get to pick it out, they give it to you right away. You don't have that hassle of sitting down, ordering from somebody, waiting on your food. You go to the end of the line and pay, and he thinks this is just the coolest thing he's ever seen. So he goes back to his boss and says, hey, I've got a great idea. And his boss says, you're fired. And he said, you can't fire me because I quit. And Clarence Saunders left there that day and went and launched something that we have all probably been, using, we've been using them a lot, but you've probably been in one of these in the last week. It was the first modern day grocery store. So Clarence's idea was, look, why don't we let the customer serve themselves? If they can do that in the restaurant business, they can also do that in the grocery business. And so he just established the very first grocery store. And it was one of these where you walk in, it goes through this serpentine, you had to go down all the aisles, and a ton of things came out of that. One of the things that came out of that new style of doing groceries was they had to come up with a grocery cart. Before, there had never been a grocery cart. So he had to figure out some way to get around and pick up the food. Branding is largely responsible because of that grocery store, that start of that grocery store. Because if you think about it, in the past, if somebody came in and said, hey, I need a cup of flour, they'd go to the back, they'd get it out of the big bin, nobody cared. But now, all of a sudden, my flour is sitting up on the shelf next to your flour, and it's sitting next to your flour, and I want you to pick mine. So they started putting these big stars on it, and new and enriched, and started putting these fancy labels and so forth. So branding is largely, started because of Clarence Saunders. Who knows, by the way, the name of the very first grocery chain? Piggly Wiggly. Now, why in the world, if you were starting a grocery chain, would you name it Piggly Wiggly? I don't know. Who's ever been in a Piggly Wiggly? Okay, I was born in Louisiana. I've been in a Piggly Wiggly. So raise your hand if you've ever owned a place to live or owned a vehicle. Motorcycle, car, truck, apartment, whatever. Okay, most of us. So let me show you this. Which do you think is the rental? Okay, so big difference when we start thinking about owning something, being an owner versus just being somebody who is just kind of being a steward of something for a while. So hopefully if you have, how many of you ever rented? How many of you, your place looked like this when you were renting? Okay, so absolutely not. So here's what I want you to talk about at your table. Oops, sorry, jumping way ahead of myself. Dan just brought me up here. Okay, what does an owner do different from a non-owner? What does an owner do different from a non-owner? And how does an engaged employee look different from a zombie employee? Who knows what I mean by a zombie employee? What's a zombie employee? Task-oriented, robotic, what'd you say? Robot, they just come, think about zombies, right? How do they act? They just walk around, bumping into things. If they bump into a big fence, do they figure out how to get some cutters and figure out how to get, no, they just keep pushing up against the fence until enough of them come along and they're able to knock the fence over and keep going. They live for one thing. What do zombies live for? brains, okay, otherwise known as food, but yeah, they want to eat something, right? And basically when you think about zombie employees, they just walk around, they mail it in, and all they're living for is just that paycheck. Now, that's very different from an engaged employee. What does an engaged employee look like?
Enjoys his job.
Enjoys their job. They have purpose. Okay. Goes above what's expected. All right, so I've got you primed and started. Talk about this at your table. What does an owner do different from a non-owner? How's a zombie employee different from an engaged employee? Go. All right, good. So how is an owner different from a non-owner? What's different with an owner? Take pride. You care. They're accountable. Good. They're looking for ways to improve. Okay, awesome. There's something fundamentally different about someone who shows up at work and has an owner mentality. So really this whole idea, this is the third, fourth year for us to teach it at supervisor school. I've got a book coming out on this subject that I handed to Mike to show him earlier, and I think he took it. So I was going to pass it around, but we'll get that later. But this was really born out of a conversation I had with the CEO where we're standing there in the hallway, and I said, hey, his name was Dave, you need to fire all your employees. He's like, what are you talking about, Martin? Fire all the employees. You know, how are we going to run a company? What do you mean fire all employees? I said, Dave, you don't want people with you don't want employees, you want owners. You want people who come to work going, hey, I take pride in this. This is my baby. Because here's a little hint. Ownership doesn't have anything to do with whether your name is on the deed or not. It has everything to do with the attitude that you come to work with. So we're going to talk about how do you have an owner mentality and how do you lead other people to do the same. So a lot of that starts with who shows up. How do you show up? How do you show up to work? How do you show up to relationships? How do you show up to management? All of those things. So I want everybody to do something real quick. Stand up. Okay, some of you have done this. On the count of 3, you are going to do one of 2 poses, okay? One pose is, hey, I just won the lottery. I just won the Boston Marathon. Look at me, you're just celebrating. Okay, big hands up in the air. The other one is the Superman pose. I am Superman, Superwoman, okay? So none of this wimpy stuff, not like this, not like, scarecrow. It's got to be really big, like this or like this, okay? You got to do one or the other. I hope we got that camera ready. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go. Hold it. Got a lot of trees in the room, all right, good, hold it, hold it. Okay, good, sit down. That has absolutely nothing to do with anything. I just wanted to see y'all do that. No, I'm just kidding, obviously. They've actually done some research out of Harvard, and this has just come out in the last couple of years. There's a great TED Talk on it. And what they discovered was when you adopt an open pose, when you use your body in a certain way, a couple of things happen. So there's all sorts of chemicals, going through our body at any given time, but 2 in particular. Testosterone controls our energy, okay? Testosterone and cortisol. They're both kind of stimulants. Those are drugs that kind of get your energy going in a particular fashion. But the difference between them is this. Testosterone is the confidence drug. Testosterone is the, okay, I'm on it, I got it, I can do this, I can totally own this situation. Cortisol is also a stimulant, but it's the, oh crap, we are so screwed. It's all that negative anxiety and energy that you get when you're upset about a situation or where your confidence is not quite there. So what they discovered was when you adopt an open position like what we just did, one of those, for only 2 minutes, Testosterone, they can measure this, goes up, cortisol goes down, okay? So the confidence drug is surging through your body just by standing there like that for 2 minutes. The opposite is also true. If you adopt a closed position, so what would a closed position look like? Okay, something like this, you're sort of hunched over. If you've ever been waiting to go into a very important meeting, maybe an interview or something, you're kind of down like this in the chair, you know, texting and on your phone, and you're all hunkered down. The opposite happens. Cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. They did this, in fact, they did a study with doing this, and they had people adopt one of those two poses, go in for a very brief interview, a little 5-minute interview that they captured on camera. And they took all those interviews and they showed them to people and said, who would you hire? Consistently, they said they would hire the people that had adopted, they didn't know they had done this, but that had adopted the open position because they just simply showed up differently. So you're showing up to work one of two ways. You're either showing up as Superman, Superwoman, I'm here to serve, or you're showing up as Eeyore. Who knows Eeyore? What's Eeyore like? Describe Eeyore for me. Cloud over his head. What else? Slow, lethargic, just kind of, and everything's always bad all the time. I had a thing I started talking about when I was going out to one of the refineries in particular, and I called it refinery face, okay? Who knows what I'm talking about? Refinery face. We'd sit around in the morning meetings. Thank you, John Neff. We'd sit around in the morning meetings, and this is the way the meeting would go. Burp, 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 burp. And nobody's smiling. There's no, you know, joking or any kind of stuff. It was just this Eeyore kind of presence there. So you're showing up to work either in a way that is really building energy and bringing your absolute best, or you're showing up to work in a way that just kind of brings people down. And we'll talk about that some more in a minute. So who knows the 3 kinds of responsible? Who knows the 3 kinds of responsible? Some of y'all may have heard me talk about this. What are the 3 kinds of responsible? Anybody have teenagers? Okay, so you know the first one. Irresponsible, okay? Irresponsible. What does irresponsible look like? Don't do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, basically. You just don't, you know, you can't be counted on, you can't follow through. How many of you have a friend that you know if they tell you they're going to do something that there's about a 30% chance it's actually going to happen? Anybody know somebody like that? Okay, you just can't count on them. They're irresponsible. Now, what's the opposite of irresponsible? Responsible. You do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. How many of you have somebody that you know they're kind of like clockwork? In the Air Force, I was hearing about this recently. They have a certain missile type or missile types that they call fire and forget. And basically what that means is that missile is so reliable that once you hit that button, boom, set that thing off, you walk away from it because you know it's going to hit its target. I mean, I don't care what happens to that target. It's going to seek it out and destroy it. So how many of you know people like that are fire and forget? They're so responsible. When they say they're going to do something, they're going to do something. Okay, good. So we got irresponsible, we got responsible. What's the third kind? This is the one I actually see much more prominent out there. It's what we call non-responsible. And what does non-responsible look like? Non-responsible is any time you attribute something that is within your world as being outside of your control, okay? Anytime you attribute something that is within your sphere, within your world, as being outside of your control. Hey man, I told you, I was going to get that to you by Friday. It's Monday now, and I just didn't. Tony didn't give me the stuff he was supposed to, and I mean, I called him, I left him a voicemail, but I just, I hadn't heard back from him, so it's really not my fault. It was just the circumstances. Or I was going to do that. Oh, I was going to take care of that, but I got really busy working on this other thing that you told me you also wanted me to do, and never got around to do that. It was kind of outside of my control. Okay, we call that non-responsible. And non-responsible people are all over the workplace. Is it fun to work with non-responsible people or frustrating to work with non-responsible people? Frustrating. Because here's the point. If you're non-responsible, you might as well just be irresponsible. Because when you're being non-responsible, people still can't count on you. So here's what I want you to walk away from these next couple of days from this talk in particular. Be responsible. I started adopting this the first time I came across this idea a couple of years ago, and it has radically changed my life because I catch myself when I start to make excuses. Hey, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, but, this, that, and the other. And I found that it has radically changed the way that I do things. I actually became familiar with some of my non-responsible behavior, my dependability years ago, back when I was married. Maybe that's why I'm divorced now. But I remember coming home and it was a late night work. I pulled in, walked in the door, and it's, about 11 o'clock at night, and my wife at the time said, hey, did you get the milk that I asked you to pick up? I went, oh. And it was when I looked up and saw the look on her face that I began to make a change. What do you think the look on her face was? That shattered me, that just destroyed me, that made me, really do an about face. Disappointment. Can't count on you. Okay, can't count on you. No, it was actually furious, and she stabbed me in the chest. No, that's not true. Just kidding. No, it was actually a face that basically said, it's no big deal. I kind of knew you wouldn't do it anyway. And I saw that face and I thought, boy, you talk about the height of non-responsible in that moment. So you know what I did? I got my car, I said, nope, I'm going back out to get the milk. She said, no, it's too late. Don't worry about it. It's not that big a deal. We'll make do in the morning, something else. I said, no, it stops here. And I got in my car, and we lived kind of far out, and I had to drive a long ways to find an open grocery store to go in there, or a gas station to go in there and pay $8 a gallon for, some milk. But I decided that I was going to live responsibly. I believe that responsible people are some of the happiest people on the planet because they're not always victims of their environment. Owners are responsible. Owners have attitude. Attitude. Okay, so think about the way you spell the word attitude. I was listening to a guy speak one time, and he went up there and accidentally spelled it with 2 D's, and I thought that is brilliant because the right attitude should absolutely add something to a situation and to the environment. Now, I don't know if you know this. Let me ask you, do people do more things for people they like or people they don't like? Okay, so I love that question. I started asking that question because I was having people tell me all the time, hey, people don't have to like me, they just have to respect me. So I asked a guy that one time right after he had said that, I said, look, do people do more things for people they like or people they don't like? He said, probably people they like. I said, okay, well then why would you not want people to like you? In fact, I was talking to a Marine, this guy was 70, probably 5 years old, this was a few weeks ago. And he was we were talking about this whole thing, command and control and respect and all of that stuff. And he was telling me about his experience over in Vietnam. He had gone over with 150 other Marines on kind of a suicide mission. None of them planned to make it back. They actually all ended up making it back. But I don't know completely what this guy did. He told me at one point, he said, Darren, there's some things that happened in Vietnam that I can never tell another living soul. So of course my next question was, like what? He said, that's the point. I can't tell you. But anyway, so we started talking. He said, I will tell you this. And I said, what's that? He said, the commanders and the people that we didn't like, they didn't make it out of there. And I said, well, how is that? And he said, well, when we would get out there and, where the enemy was, we would salute them. And they would get, all good Marines evidently know you're not supposed to salute your commander, but it would be a surefire way for them to know, here's the guy in charge, and about 2 minutes later they'd have a bullet through their head. So it's not important that people like me, I just want them to respect me. And they took that to heart and they showed them absolute and total respect, but in a way that got them killed. So there was a certain quarterback that they ran some numbers on. This was a few years ago. When this quarterback, he brought such attitude to the team that when he came on the field, everybody's performance went up by 10%. The running back got extra yardage, the receivers performed better. Every stat that you could measure went up just from this guy walking on the field. So you either elevate other people or you bring them down. So talk about this real quick at your table. Describe someone you have worked with. Don't get too detailed. Now, if they're at your table, describe someone at work who raises everyone else's performance. That one's okay. But I want you to also describe someone at work who deflates everybody else's performance, okay? Somebody at a work situation that raises everyone else's performance. What do they do? What are the qualities of them? And someone at work that tends to deflate everybody else's performance. What do they do? Go. Yeah, if you can run one of them, I'll take the other one. All right, how about it? Let's hear from some of you. Just walk around, pick somebody, pick a table. Tell us about people that elevate other people's performance. What do they like? What do you see in them?
I think managers that have been elevated with me have been just understanding what my development needs are and giving me the opportunity to work on projects that I wouldn't normally have the opportunity to work on. So that's, for me, that's contributed a lot to growing myself because they're interested in growing me.
Awesome. So they care about your advancement and development, and then they give you some stretch projects, some things. Okay, good. Who else? Dan, pick a table.
I know an engineer that's really positive, really gung-ho, doesn't seem to let things bother him, and even though you can kind of read his mind, and you can't buy into this, like, just his actions are contagious, and it gets us all kind of started to act the same way.
Fantastic. It is contagious. Is behavior and attitude contagious? Absolutely. Either way, right? Okay, somebody else. Another table, right there. Managers or people you've worked with that have elevated behavior. What'd y'all talk about?
I think they just walk into a room and you can sense the presence that they have. They're a leader. They're somebody that you're going to want to follow. Work with. They're going to be shoulder to shoulder with you in the trenches.
Awesome. Some people elevate that energy level, right? Fantastic. One more. Someone who elevates. What do you notice about them? Back there.
Ed? So what I notice is the ones that come in and ask a question in a positive way to kind of understand is very different than the one who comes in looking for the problem to sort of say, okay, well, that's wrong. And so it's more about exploring and then picking a positive direction.
Okay, I love it. By the way, questioning attitude, one of our pillars, right? There are good I talked about this when we were teaching the pillars at all the refineries. There are good ways to ask questions, ways that open people up, and ways that kind of, shut people down. So the way you ask a question can go a long way. Okay, what about some negative things? What about some people you've interacted with that just kind of tend to bring everybody else's performance down? Don't use any names, sir. Like I said, especially if they're in the room. What'd y'all talk about? Did y'all get to that?
I have worked with somebody that thinks his goal in life is to be devil's advocate for every discussion that I'm involved in.
Okay.
It's really
That just naysayer, devil's advocate for every, there's always, hey, this looks like this is going to be fantastic. And that person's like, well, it can't be that great. Okay, good. Somebody else, or let me give you the opposite opinion or perspective. Good. You have one? I thought you were raising your hand there, John. Okay, what about y'all? Dan, you got a table? Just go pick on somebody. They were all supposed to talk about it, so. Go ahead.
Yeah, we discussed, an employee who is slow, tends to be sluggish, kind of brings down the energy in the room. Also some examples that we talked about were, employees who come in late, leave early, who are just require that extra attention.
Okay, so either that have really just draggy, that Eeyore energy, or they just don't care that much and they just seem like they're punching the clock. Okay, one more example of people that kind of bring down the energy. Or
if you're positive, those people aren't that gloom and doom. You don't accept that, and you don't tolerate it. So you're less apt to, they don't be that way. You got to be by example. And if you're positive, upbeat, and it's like we was talking here, if someone starts that, step in, put a positive spin on it, let's get the conversation going up.
I love it. Okay, so you want to be a change maker in that regard, and that's what owners do. By the way, one of the things I adopted last year as just one of my life principles is I want to elevate the inherent greatness of every person I encounter. Okay, now that sounds like a pretty tall order, and I'm not going to say I do that 100% of the time, but elevate the inherent greatness, meaning that everybody's got greatness in them. Everybody's got, fantastic opportunities and ideas and things. They may have shut that off a long time ago, but everybody's got greatness in them. And so I just decided in casual day-to-day life that I want to elevate that inherent greatness in everybody I meet. So when I typically walk into a place, I try to bring a lot of energy in the room. So let me ask you this, walking into, like a coffee shop to get some coffee in the morning, how much energy do you think I have to have the most amount of energy of anybody in the place? Okay, someone said the other day, 200%, got to be really, really big. And I'm like, no, that's kind of the sad state of affairs, because it's got to just be a little, right? If I just say, hey, how's it going? So I'll go to the counter, and we've been through a long line of zombies coming through, give me my coffee with black and cream, and and then everybody moves down the little assembly line, and I'll go up and go, hey! And all of a sudden, it's like craziness just erupted in the coffee shop. The person would be like, hey, and then the coffee makers are turning around and all the other customers, what is going on here? We're actually interacting, people are talking. So it doesn't take much to show up in a way that just elevates the performance of everybody else around you. That's what owners do, okay? Some other things owners do. Okay, who would like a $20 bill? Who wants a $20 bill? Come on, who wants a $20 bill? Thank you, Ross. Okay. Could have given me a little more time than that. So last year I did that. We didn't have someone quite as eager as Ross, but that's awesome. That's perfect.
I remember you telling the story last year.
You remember me telling the story. Ross is like, I'm going after it. You cheated, buddy. Yeah. But what's everybody else doing? I'm holding up a $20 bill. Who wants a $20 bill? What was everybody else doing? You're raising your hand. You're waiting for 100. Okay. You're holding out. Who wants a $100 bill? No. But Ross will be up here quicker than you. No. So I did that last year, and people just, and I kept waving it. Who wants a $20 bill? Who wants a $20 bill? Me. And finally, somebody figured it out and came walking up, and I put it in their hand and gave it to them. Owners go to the action. They don't wait for it to come to them. They don't stand back there and wave their hand. I remember talking to a couple of guys at a place where I was doing some coaching, and this job had just come open, and there were two potential people that I knew would be interested in this job. And so I started talking to them, and they had the absolute opposite philosophy about how to go about that. The one guy I talked to said, well, I figure if they're interested in me, they'll come talk to me about it. They'll come call on me and, come check it out and come talk to me if they're really interested. I said, well, maybe you should go talk. No. That's up to them. If they want me to be, consider, I'd really like to have it. The next guy I talked to, you know what he said? He said, I walked into that office 30 seconds after I found out that job might be open and said, you know that's my job, right? So which of those two do you think is going to be in higher consideration probably for that job? Okay, I see HR over there shaking their head, right, Lacey? The person who goes after it. So I coached my, all of my kids in basketball, a little thing called Upwards Basketball. This is supposed to be a basketball. Can we pretend this is a basketball? Okay, so I need 6 people. Let me get a table. I need you guys right up here. Come on up. Y'all are going to be my little 5-year-old girl basketball team, okay?
This is a hype joke.
5-year-old girls. This was my little straggler, the baby. So I would get these girls in there and we'd start, you know, having our first day of practice, and then I would have them line up. So I want y'all to make 2 lines of 3 right here. Just face each other. 2 lines, 1 line, 1 line. Boy, they were a lot quicker than you guys are. I don't know. This way, 1 line.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, facing 1, 2, 3. Okay. Boy. Okay, I told y'all we were going to get out on time or a little bit early, but not after getting these 6 together. So I'd come in here and I'd start talking about the game of basketball. Everybody see? And I would be sitting here and I'd be talking about the game of basketball and the way basketball works. And then I would do that. And what do you think happened with that ball when I did that? It just sort of dribbled right through the line, at which point I went all evil on these little 5-year-old girls. And I said, let me tell you something. Did y'all see that ball go in front of you? I better not ever see a basketball come that close to you and you not be down there grabbing it. Said, this is what the game is about right here. You've got to own this ball, and that ball better not ever come within 10 feet of you, but you aren't going after it to try to get a hold of it. And man, then I would drop, you guys don't do this, I'm not going to get hurt, but then I would drop that ball, and they would be scratching and clawing and scrambling. Okay, big round of applause for our, I would say volunteers, except I volunteered them. Okay, so leaders, owners go after the ball. They don't wait for the ball to come to them. All right, every table has a puzzle piece on it. I put it on either the little black book on your table or it's on one of the glasses. I want you to get together at your table and talk real quick. Just look at that piece and try to get some concept. There's only one table that actually has 2 pieces because I had 1 extra. So I want you to talk about what you think that puzzle looks like. Talk based on what you're looking at. What does that puzzle look like? You win. You guys have the best 2 pieces, probably.
Not first or last.
Okay, every group has a puzzle piece, right? One table has 2 puzzle pieces. Does it dawn on anybody that maybe those puzzle pieces might actually kind of connect up together? All right, one person grab that piece and come up here and rebuild it right on top of this other puzzle. Go, grab that piece and come and put it together. Let's go, real fast. Go, 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 go. It's a 12-piece puzzle. This should not take that long. Boy, this is like that back table back there on the helicopter build. Sorry, guys. I don't mean to be picking on y'all. Okay, awesome. Good job. How many of you thought to do that before I mentioned that? So here we are. We're all sitting at our own little tables. We got our little piece of the puzzle, and we're studying that little piece of the puzzle. How often does that go on at work? that we're focused on our area. I'm an engineer, I'm an operations guy, I'm a maintenance guy. This is my little piece of the puzzle, and I'm trying to figure everything out by just looking at that piece of the puzzle. Owners collaborate. They get with other people. They find out what's going on in other parts of the company. How many of you have gone to lunch with somebody or taken somebody out for beer in a completely different part of the refinery or the company just because you wanted to hear about what they do and how it may impact, you and us as a business, okay? We've got a few hands going on. I strongly encourage that. Owners have what we call an enterprise focus. They don't think about their little piece of the puzzle. They think about the big picture and the way everything is impacted. And I think we've got to get a lot better at that as a company. One of the things I love, the trends I've seen over the last couple of years, Mark Turry's helping with this, kind of going around the values and the pillars and the things that we are emphasizing is that, look, we are all in this together. Owners have an enterprise focus, which means if we have an enterprise focus, then we have to eliminate us, them. So talk to your table real quick about some of the us, thems that you see at your particular place of business. What are some us, thems within the company? Go. All right, so good. In the interest of time, call some out. Give me some us, thems. What are some us, thems?
Maintenance operations.
Maintenance operations. Now, if there's not two groups that are more interdependent on each other, and yet we get in this, cat fights over who, what, when, where was supposed to, okay, but maintenance operations, what else?
Salary and hourly.
Salaried and hourly, good. HEP, HFC. I was thinking about that earlier when Mike Jennings was talking about the economic impacts and why in the world we have that. Are HEP and HFC in this together? Are they partners together in this? Yeah, but we get a lot of us, them, right? What those blankety blank, guys did. What else? Contractors, employees. I remember the first time I went up to Cheyenne and I walked into Kevin Burke's office and I'd gone out in some of the control rooms. And I said, hey, yeah, Kevin, I couldn't use the bathroom when I went out in the control room. He's like, Martin, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, I couldn't use the bathroom. It was really, really bad. I had to hurry up and get back here. He said, what are you, I said, big sign on the door said, no contractors allowed on the bathroom. I said, dude, really? Does that foster the kind of mentality that we're trying to develop? What is this, second-class citizen sort of thing? So yeah, contractors versus employees. Hey, let me ask you this. Do you have contractors who really have a high gas factor? You know what I mean by gas? Okay, I'm not going to say it. We're on film. We're on camera right now. But yes, do you think there are raise your hand if you think there are contractors out there that really care about the success of the company, whatever the company may be that they're working for, okay? All right? Do you have some contractors that are just zombie employees and just don't give a rip and don't care about the quality of their work? Okay, absolutely. Do you have employees that have a really high gas factor? Okay, really care about the company and make it, they own it, they act like. Do you have some employees who just are zombie employees and just don't give much of a rip, they just mail it? Doesn't have anything to do with the label you're wearing, it has to do with the quality of the person that you are. So good, what else? Other us, thems.
Large cap versus refinery.
Large cap versus refinery. Yes. That's a legitimate one though. No, I'm just kidding. That was a joke. That was a joke. Okay, what else? Other us, thems. Management and union, absolutely. Are we all working for the same company? Absolutely. You get headquarters versus refinery. We can go on and on and on. If we're going to be successful, if we're going to be the premier refining company, we need owners who don't think in terms of us, them, who think in terms of that the person most out there on the fringe has an impact on our company and needs to be treated with the same respect and have the same expectations that we do with every single person that walks into our doors, okay? Now this is an idea I've talked about before, but owners bring a plan versus an idea. Owners don't bring ideas, they bring plans. So I want you to picture, I actually brought a little mock model. Last year I had a really big one. My son comes in and he says, Dad, we need to buy a new lawnmower. What would you say to that kind of statement? Dad, we need a new lawnmower. Quit your whining and get out there and mow the lawn. I've been using that lawnmower for, let's say you just turned the lawn mowing over to him from, 3 months ago and like, we need a new lawnmower. No, you don't. Get out there and mow the lawn, right? What if, however, your son were to come to you and say, Dad, I think we need a new mower, and I want you to just hear me out on this. So the current mower we have is having a little bit of issues. It used to take about 40 minutes to mow the lawn. It's taking about 3 hours now because it's got some mechanical issues. I checked on repairing it, but the repair costs are going to be pretty extravagant. Now, I've checked on 3 different models of mowers. These are a little higher end. They all run in the $900 range. I picked out this particular S275 model. And it's about $900, but I've lined up 5 yards down the street at $35 a pop. If you will loan me the $900 to buy that mower, I'm going to mow those lawns and start a little lawn mowing business, and within 2 to 3 months, I will pay you back the entire $900 plus 20% return on your money. What do you think, Dad? What do you think? What would you do? Be like, son, where do I sign? Now, does anybody have any kids like that? Okay, that's an owner mentality, but you would say yes to that. So many times what I hear people talking about, and I'm coaching them, they're like, well, I threw out this really great idea, but, they just didn't do it. They didn't follow through on it. But the issue is that it's an idea, it's not a plan. Hey, I've been studying this for about 3 months now, and I've been running some numbers on it, and the way I'm looking at it, if we were to invest and spend this is the kind of return we could get. Yeah, but what about this? I've checked on that as well. So owners bring plans, not just ideas, okay? So let me get you to do something real quick. Everybody look for all of the red in the room. Look around the room real quick and look for all of the red or shades of red, pink, orange, red, everything in that shade, okay? Look for all of it. Okay, you got some things in mind? All right, everybody close your eyes. Real quick, close your eyes. Now, tell me all the blue that you saw in the room. Okay, all right, you can open your eyes. How many of you saw a lot of blue when you were looking around the room? You didn't see it. What did you see a lot of? Why? That's what you were looking for. We have this little thing called the reticular activation system. Okay, that sounds really fancy. But the reticular activation system works this way. It means we see what we are looking for. So if you decide today, hey, I'm going to buy a new car, I'm going to give me a Ford F-150, and you start driving around out there and looking, what are you going to see all over the road? Ford F-150. It's going to feel like every single person in New Mexico owns a Ford F-150. They're going to be all over the place. Pick a brand. I don't care what that brand is. We see the things that we're looking for. So, by the way, if you decide that the world is a mean, terrible place and everybody's out to screw you over, what kind of people are you going to encounter on a regular basis? People that, at least to your perception, are trying to screw you over. Because intent on the other person's part really has nothing to do. It comes from within us, how we perceive and see other people. On the other hand, if you decide that the world is a great, wonderful place and that everybody will help you given the opportunity, what kind of people are you going to see out there? What'd you say, me? Okay, you're going to see helpful people. We make up our minds about what we're looking for. What are some things that owners look for that other non-owners don't look for? Talk about that at your table real quick. What do owners see that other people don't tend to see? All right, good. So I actually pulled a little trick on y'all. There was an experiment that they did at the company, and I thought I would replicate it today. What they did was they took a fairly well-traveled hallway at that company, and they took a wad of paper, big wad of paper, and they threw it in the middle of the hallway. And then they observed behavior. What do you think happened with people with that wad of paper in the middle of the hallway? Lots of people just walked on by it, right? Just walked on by it. Until, very rarely, but the occasional person would come along and do what I saw Keith do, okay? Because I had clumps, I'm talking to you. I had clumps of wadded up paper. How many of you saw clumps of wadded up paper on the ground when you walked in to do the helicopter exercise, okay? How many of you picked that up, picked one of those up? Okay, so that's exactly what they saw in this experiment. People would come along, they'd walk by, walk by. The occasional person would come and they would pick it up and go throw it in the trash can. And then they would go interview that person. Why did you do that? I actually saw Keith come in, he picked one of them up, and I had to get his attention because I saw him look out of the corner of his eye like, there's another one over there. And I was like, hey, I started talking to him so he wouldn't go pick up and ruin my total experiment, right? I was afraid he's going to go around the room and snag them all. But that's what owners do. They have a different mentality. When they would interview them and say, hey, what was the difference? Why did you do that? Nobody else was doing that. Why did you do that? They'd say, hey, this is my house. This is my place. This is my company. And I feel like it's my responsibility to take care of things. So what are some things that owners see that other people don't see? Opportunities to improve. Non-owners go, oh, come on, man, it's good enough. Why are you always coming up with all these, more work? What else? What do owners see? Possibilities. Absolutely. Maybe we can do it different. Maybe we can do it better. Okay? What else? Big picture. Love it. Okay, absolutely. So owners have their eyes trained for different things. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think what do leaders develop? Real, true leaders, what do they develop? Followers? Other leaders. So I can't remember the two coaches' names, but it was something, I think it was in a Maxwell book years ago I saw. They had these two coaches historically, like Newt Rockne and Hallis or somebody. It was these two guys that had very similar winning records down through their career. They both had about 300 wins each, I think. They'd won a very similar amount of like Super Bowls and other big events and so forth. And it was really awesome. They were like neck and neck if you just put their stats up next to each other until you got to this one criteria. And the criteria was how many people that worked for them went on to become coaches, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, have prominent positions within the NFL. And one guy had 2 names under him, and the other guy had about 20 names under him with all the teams and people and leaders that he had developed. Real leaders, real owners develop other leaders. They don't develop followers. So if you can look around and see how many people you've helped elevate to new heights and new positions and new things, that's a pretty good indication that you are leading other people into leading. So that starts, by the way, with getting, as Jim Collins says, the right people on the bus. How many of you have heard that phrase? Get the right people on the bus. Because it starts with kind of who are we starting with? So if we're going to have an owner company, if we're going to have an owner mentality, we need to hire owners. Chick-fil-A is dead serious about this, about creating a certain culture that they want to create. One of the things that they do in their interview process is they'll be sitting there and the interviewer's talking to them, and they'll be sitting there at the desk, and they've got this big stack of folders on their desk, and they reach over to do something, they accidentally knock it off the desk. It falls on the ground, okay? If the interviewee sits there while the interviewer goes down and picks it up and stacks it back together, they're probably not getting a job at Chick-fil-A. Why? Because they want people who will go to where the problem is, right? Like we were talking about earlier, going to the ball. So we need to hire and develop and expect only owners. We want a 100% owner company. What does that mean? Well, low performers, you either got to manage them up or you got to manage them out. Manage them up or manage them out. And I ask people 2 qualifying questions when I'm talking to managers. So when a manager says, hey, I have a lot of trouble with so-and-so, and I'm just thinking about letting them go, by the way, when's the best time to fire somebody? First time you think about it. Just kidding. Wow, that sounds harsh. I sound like Dan the Hatchet Man now. No, okay, so don't take that too much to heart. But how many of you have known people that you've never thought about firing? You've never considered. These people, they're salt of the earth, they're gold standard, right? We've got other people that you work with, and here's my 2 qualifying questions. If this person applied for their job today, would you hire them? What kind of answers do you think I normally get? Sometimes there's a superlative on the front end. Hell no, right? No. What do you think my follow-up question that is? Then why are they working here? If you wouldn't hire this person for don't we come to work and interview for our job every day? I certainly know I do. You come to work every day and interview for your job with the kind of performance you bring and sort of, now we are very fortunate and blessed. We've got an amazing company and we've got great job security within that, but you ought to be performing every day. The other question I ask, the other qualifying question I say is, if this were your company and you were either making the money or losing the money, would you hire this person? No way. Well, then why are they good enough for HFC? Right? Is that a fair question? So we got to get the right people on the bus. And by the way, poison, which is a very, very small percentage, you have to eliminate. How much cow dung, a professor of mine used to say, does it take to spoil a bowl of ice cream? That'll catch up with you in a little bit. Okay, yeah. You're going to give me a bowl of ice cream, you sprinkle a little bit of cow dung on it, I'm done. I'm probably not eating it, right? How much poison within an organization or on a unit or within a department does it take to spoil a whole department, a whole unit? Yeah, Michael Jackson was wrong. One bad apple does spoil the whole bunch, right? If you're not careful about it. In fact, I heard a guy talking recently, a fantastic speaker, he was talking about management. He said the single worst thing that a company can do is keep low or non-performers or poison, because they will just completely erode the performance of everybody else around them, and they will eventually destroy the company, and I'm a real believer in that. In fact, we have any NASCAR fans? So I went to my first NASCAR event with my daughter, and we had pit passes, and this is what I got to videotape. Now, they're pulling this car over on the side of the road. We got to go right up there and where the action was taking place. They've got to change out 4 tires. They've got to shove 2 of those big fuel things that I think are about 80 pounds of fuel each into this car, and watch how fast this happens. And it's off. That car has been pumped with 160 pounds of fuel. It's had 4 tires changed, and they have completely wiped the windshield and gotten that car ready to go back out on the track in 14 seconds. Now, if you've got 3 guys that can change a tire in 12 seconds, and 1 guy it takes a minute and a half to change, how long is it going to take to get the car back out? So you're only as strong as your weakest link, okay? Now, I'm not talking about people that are new or learning things or catching on, but I'm talking about those zombie employees who come along. They're dragging you down. Owners make sure that they're surrounding themselves with other owners. Okay, so I'm going to show you this real quick. What motivates people? What do you think motivates people? Money?
It's different for each individual.
Different for each individual? Listen, money, obviously, stop paying everybody, quit with the paychecks and see how many people show up to work. But that's a baseline. They actually did a study and they asked managers, what is the highest motivator for people at work? And they talked about things like money, benefits, vacation, bonuses, that sort of stuff. And one other thing in there was the ability to get things done, the ability to get work done. The managers ranked that dead last, number 6. They said money was the top of the game. Guess what everybody else where the people that were not managers rated that? Number 1, let me come to work and do a great job. You could come to work and make a whole lot of money and sit around and be completely useless and be completely ineffective because you're in a bureaucratic system that doesn't allow anything ever to happen? And are you going to go home with a strong sense of satisfaction because I made a bunch of money? I mean, it's going to be nice. But when's the best day? When do you go home just smiling ear to ear? The day that you did very little work and got very little accomplished? Typically, for most people, for the people I would imagine sitting in this room, it's when you're able to go home and say, man, I accomplished something. We had a problem, we solved it, I came up with a new idea, we came up with a new thing, and you're able to really do what I believe is true. Edward Deming says, nobody comes to work to do a bad job. So there are basically two kind of philosophies about people out there. People are either sorry, they don't want to work, you got to keep an eye on them all the time. If you're not constantly cracking the whip, they're not going to work. Or people have an innate creativity and desire to perform, and everybody comes to work to really shine and to do a good job. Do you think which of those you believe about other people as a manager makes a difference in the kind of performance you get? I'm getting a lot of blank stares. Absolutely it does. It makes all the difference in the world because the attitude you have about the people that work for you is going to be demonstrated in the kind of performance that they give you, okay? So, I'm going to put up a case study real quick. Let me show you this just for fun. We asked what motivates people. Here's one take on that.
When we asked Reebok to send us Terry Tate, some people thought we were crazy. But I'm a firm believer in paradigm breaking, outside the box thinking. Amen. And since Terry's doing this, our productivity has gone up 46%. Even more from our employees than ever before.
You know you need a cover sheet on your TPS reports, Bridget. Dang you, baby. Hey, Janice.
Sometimes it's become part of the Felcher family. He fits right in there.
That's a long next call, kiddo.
To be honest, I wish Reebok sent us 10 Terry Tates.
All right, how many of you think you need a Terry Tate in your place of business there? All right. Okay, so get your tab real quick. We're going to close out with this real quick. I want you to look at this case study. Fred's been at the plant for 20 years. He's been in the same position for the last 7 years. He's been a high performer in the past, but lately his performance has been slipping. He recently tried to drive some initiatives that he is convinced would increase production significantly. There was some initial interest, but it got lost in the shuffle and appears to have died. The last time he mentioned it to his supervisor, he was told, let it go, we have bigger fish to fry, whatever that means. He applied for a new position that came open, but the rumor is they're hiring from the outside. So talk about this situation. Do you think that Fred is an owner? Do you think that Fred works in an owner culture? And do you think that Fred's boss is fostering an owner kind of mentality? Go at your table. Ash. All right, good. Y'all just pick a table. What did y'all talk about? Bring him a microphone. What did you guys talk about? Right here, Ashley.
We think Fred was an owner.
Okay, was an owner. Have you ever known people that started with lots of vim and vigor at a company and then just ran out of gas at some point? Have you ever been one of those people, okay? I talked to a guy out at a place and he said, we started talking and we started talking about some ideas, and he said, man, I used to have a lot of ideas. I shut that off a long, long time ago because he was afraid. He ended up in a situation, all right? So good. What else? What'd y'all say?
We don't think the company, or the possible supervisor probably is owner.
Okay.
Or would be working with Fred. Helping with his ideas, helping work with the system.
Okay, all right, good. What else? Another table. Dan, you got one?
We discussed the fact that even if Fred didn't come with a plan, that his boss couldn't come back and said something other than let it go, we have bigger fish to fry. Couldn't come back and said, well, maybe if you come back with a plan, we can discuss it more in detail.
Okay, good. Love it. Absolutely. Somebody else, another table, back here.
So we were saying that his boss didn't really foster a positive environment after he told him bigger fish to fry. One of the comments someone made here is perhaps Fred should be working on those bigger fish to fry projects.
Okay, so maybe there is a legitimate deal, but when you use catchy little phrases like this and you're not specific, you don't sit down and say, listen, I think that's got some great value. I love the idea you've come up with. I'd like for us to look at it Q3 of next year. I've got this other project right now that's really pressing and I need you focused on that. That's a different conversation. We don't have time for that. Okay, good. One more, couple more.
We said about the same thing as the first table, right? He was an owner. He may still kind of be, but he's really checking out because the company and his boss are not promoting that at all. They're just kind of letting him go. They're not engaged.
Okay, absolutely. Good. One more?
He didn't get any feedback when he gave him the idea in the first place. And that's part of the problem there. He gave him an idea he thought was great, but he got no feedback at all on why it wasn't good for the company.
Okay.
And that helped foster that checkout.
And in that vacuum, he just sort of checked out. Well, I want to encourage y'all on a couple of points. One, I asked a bunch of managers one time this question because I was intrigued by this. I think it was after sharing a similar case study to this. I said, so somebody comes to you, they've got a really great idea, and you say, hey, I think that's a great idea, but then it just, it kind of gets off your radar, and you hadn't thought about it lately. What would you want that person to do? Come back, hit me back up with it again. If I thought it was a great idea, come back, stay persistent with me because I'm probably just really busy and I've got a lot of other things going. I talked to people that were not managers and I said, here's a scenario. You go to your boss, you got a great idea, you think this is really awesome. They seem to agree with you, but then you really don't hear back from them. What would you do? What do you think 100% of them said they would do? Drop it. Just forget about it. So we have this huge clash between the two. Here's what I want you to think about, where I want to challenge you just individually. Owners, yes, I believe that Fred once was an owner, but I think real owners never stop being owners, okay? If the environment is not supporting you, change the environment. And yes, you can change that from the ground up, okay? If the environment's not supporting you, change the environment. If you can't change the environment, change the setting, okay? If you know what I'm talking about. But you need to decide, walking out of this room, I'm gonna be an owner. I'm gonna demonstrate those owner mentalities. I'm gonna have an enterprise focus. I'm gonna go to the ball. I'm gonna be responsible. I'm not gonna be non-responsible. I'm gonna show up as someone who is energetic and bringing value to the place and comes in with very much of an attitude of, yes, we can do this, we can make this happen. And I think if you'll do that, you will find your workplace will transform around you as you bring that sort of owner mentality. And as we begin to spread that, because it is contagious throughout this company, and we truly have an owner company, we will be the premier refining company. Thank you very much.